Hi, this is Gloria, your life coach. Welcome to another episode of Life's a Shuffle.
Hi, this is Ron Johnson, your life coach, health coach, and motivational speaker. And today we have a glimmer of sunshine of awesome person, and we have a special guest, and her name is Rae Carmen. Rae, tell us about yourself as we get to know you.
Awesome. I just want to say thank you, Ronald and Gloria, for having me on your podcast today and to be able to sit with you guys and mind jam. And a little bit about who I am is I come from a corporate background. I spent 10 years working in technology. I worked for Hewlett Packard and Cisco Systems. And it was during the 10 years that I started to have a lot of health problems. And I went from a tiny little frame of like 120 pounds to 215. I had type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and I had gotten stuck in the rat race of life. I was on the hamster wheel and I was working, 60-hour plus weeks. And what happened is I was working late one night and I was coming home and I got hit by a semi-diesel truck and it just totaled my truck. I was really lucky. I was not physically hurt by the grace of God and the angels protecting me. And I was sent to the emergency room right away because I couldn't move my neck, which was probably understandable because you get whiplash. And I came out and I came home. And the next day, my doctor called me. And she called really early. It was like 7 a.m. in the morning. And I used to be a nurse prior to working in technology. I was a trauma ER nurse. And so I knew getting a call from your doctor that early in the morning was probably not going to look good. And she called and she's like, "How is your neck?" And I was like, "Well, it's stiff. I can't move it." And she's like, "Do you feel anything?" And I was like, "Feel anything? Well, I'm numb. I mean, it's uncomfortable." And she's like, "Please come into the office right away." And so, my heart skipped a beat and I was like, this isn't looking good for me. And I get to the doctor's office and normally they stop and they get your blood pressure, they check your weight, and they do all of the stats. And they took me straight to the room, skipped all of that. And they just had me sit there. And I just remember that day they had a TV screen and it was playing the news and I'm sitting at the table and I'm just like, what is going on? I felt like I was in a dream. And I started to have a little bit of palpitations and anxiety. And she came in and she started to pry her fingers in my throat. And I was like, what's going on? And she's like, do you feel that? And I'm like, feel what? And she's like, you have a tumor in your throat. And I'm like, a what? And I was like, I don't even smoke. And she's like, I know. And she's like, and for the last year, you've been complaining of sore throats. And it looks like you have a tumor. And she pulled up the x-rays and she's like, it's half the size of a golf ball. And I was like, holy crap. And I just remember like my whole world stopped and it just paused. And I just remembered in the last 3 years, I lost three amazing women in my life. The first one was my aunt. She died of a heart attack in 7-Eleven. And then she was only 50 years old. And then my grandmother died at a very young age. She was about 72 and she died of cancer. And then my other aunt, she also died at 50 of breast cancer. And it was just in that moment that like reality hit. And it was like, girl, you got to get your shit together. I'm sorry, I'm cussing. I hope that's okay.
Yes,
That's
please.
okay. That's fine. That's okay.
And I was like, oh my God, like what is going on? And immediately they threw me into oncology. And within 24 hours, we found out that I was a stage 3 throat tumor. And the doctor told me, she's like, if it wasn't for the car accident, she's like, you probably would have been at stage 4 at any day now. And I was like, wow, like that car accident was the biggest blessing in my life. It was a huge impact. And that came in that really shook up my world. And that's when I went on a self-discovery journey. And really what it was getting my health back and getting back into my body. and I started to diet. I hired my first health coach. I hired a nutritionist, and I started to have amazing results. And through that space, I was introduced to fitness competitions with the NPC, IFBB Pro, WBFF. And I was doing so amazing with these results, and I was feeling confident about myself. I was like, sure, let's do a fitness competition. And I didn't realize that that was going to be the next phase of my evolution. And what happened is my body looked amazing. I was working really hard again, and you know this, Ron, working, 4 hours in the gym
I know.
and just running myself thin and just doing everything I could to look good. But in the background, I was dealing with negative conversations with myself, negative limiting beliefs of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not going to win. There was like a lot of negative forces that I was dealing with internally. I ended up having an eating disorder, body dysmorphia, and something that's so beautiful as to taking back your health was actually now crippling me. And I ended up going down a path of using steroids in order to continue placing in these shows. And I didn't have the awareness of what steroids would do for me later on in life. They were making me look great in the moment, but later on, I hit a lot of repercussions with my thyroid, adrenal gland, fatigue, and having a lot of gut issues. And through that space, I was dealing with stress, anxiety, comparison, dealing with imposter syndrome, things like that. I took on a negative habit, something that wasn't serving me. And I ended up going down a path of utilizing cocaine on a regular basis and being in a space of using Molly. And so all my hard work that I was doing for my body, I was just causing self-sabotage in these other spaces. And through that is when I started working with a business coach. I had my own gym at the time. I was a personal trainer. I was a health coach, but here I was with imposter syndrome. And I worked with a business coach who said, I think that you need to learn more about mindset training when working with your clients. Because one of my complaints was people lose the weight, but they gain it right back. Or they do all this hard work, but then 6 months down the road, they're right back where they started. And he's like, oh, you probably need to learn NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And so because of that recommendation, I then started to learn all about mindset and neuroscience and limiting beliefs and biology of belief and energy. And so then that took me into the next phase of my evolution. And in that space is where I believe I started to understand that if you understand your mindset and you let go of people pleasing and you let go of the fear of rejection and you learn that you need to choose yourself first and let go of people pleasing and caring what others think of you, I believe when you start to master your mindset, it opens up the portal of your purpose. And so from that space, I started to see that this was a space I loved. I love personal growth and development. I love to empower people. I like to see people have their biggest breakthroughs, whether it's inner child work, mother wounds, father wounds, traumas and tribulations, like letting go of the past. And from there, that part of my career, which I've been in since 2017, has now led me into a new space, or I shouldn't say a new space, but moved me now more into my spiritual evolution. And now working with clients more in a shamanic space and taking them through beautiful processes of traveling within themselves and being inside their bodies and being able to heal themselves spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And so it's been quite the journey of where I've been, and now really working with people in the space of there's more for me beyond the tangibles of the physical world, but there is this connection to God, source, universe, Jesus, whoever it is for you, and being able to cultivate that relationship through shamanic journeys, through breath work, somatic dance, embodiment, and being with sound healing and tools in that aspect. And so that they can really be one with self and then be one with God.
Amen to that
Wow.
story.
What a journey you've gone through. And, you went through a few transitions there.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all different. I don't even know where to start right now. That's
When I was listening
it.
to your story, I'm looking out in front of my office right now. I moved to Bellingham, Washington. It's very green, very beautiful. And it's like I'm going into deja vu, or I'm going to say it is deja vu because what you're saying is similar to my story. I'll just give you a light speed story. So I had the corporate job for like 14 years. And for me, I grew up fat and overweight, and I had really low self esteem, confidence issues, and didn't know who I really was. And going through life, no one really tells you what is confident. They say be confident. No one tells you what self esteem is. They say be self esteem. They say be this, and you don't understand because you can't put the pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started my journey when I was 25 into competing, the purpose of really competing was to get the body I've always dreamed about. Because I had gynecomastia, which is breast tits, when I was a kid because of hormone issues. And I got made fun of a lot. So if I got the body, I'll get the girl, I get the car, I'll be happy, right? All these
Mm-hmm.
outer things. And it's just when I heard that story and myself, I became a victim of steroid abuse. I wouldn't say abuse, but we don't know what you're doing. You didn't see a doctor. It is
Mm-hmm.
abuse because I call it the bro prescription. It's some dude that knows a dude to get you the stuff. It tells you to take it like this, but he's not a doctor or physician. So that's
Mm-hmm.
called bro science. So I got into taking T3, T4, steroids from all different kinds of levels for years. I one time injected my own glutes and I missed a spot and it actually went numb. I thought I had lost feeling because you listen to internet and bro science. And just year after the year, I even hired a coach one time. He tells me that I'll never forget this, that I don't have good genetics as for a black guy because a black guy's supposed to be ripped with a six pack and all this stuff. And I was just so overcome with trying to find myself. I would do whatever it took to win. And obviously I didn't. I didn't get a trophy. I never made it to the IFBB Pro. I never made it to the WNBF or whatever it may have been. And what hit the nail on my coffin was 2 years, almost a year ago. I had a client, first client ever had trained, and first client trained that wanted to compete and actually did through. Most people say they want to compete, but they don't go through the diet and all this kind of stuff. So he actually competed. I never forget, we're at a restaurant and he starts to cry and he says, "You have changed my life. I can't believe how dedicated you were."
Mm-hmm.
Right then, it told me right then and in there that, Ron, you're not meant to win a competition. That's not your destiny.
Mm-hmm.
A month later, I signed up at iPad to become a life coach because I knew right then and there that was not my journey anymore. And the same thing I noticed when I trained clients, I used to give myself so much self doubt and so much uh, uh, um, self criticism because, hey, I wrote this client a diet plan, a nutrition program. I'm training them. Why not losing the weight? Or they lose the weight in 2 weeks and they can't sustain it. What's really going on? And that's where I really realized too, I need to get out of training because it's not the training. See, the idea is if I lose 20 pounds, I feel better. But then, okay, what next? Okay, I get a new car. Okay, then what next? I get a new job. Okay, then what next? It's constant pothole filler. And that's why I started going into the mindset because you constantly are using these outer things to fill yourself. And when I heard your story, it sounds like my story just in a different way is I'm waking up to something I want. And as I'm going through this life and the drugs I've taken, the things I've experienced, I never got into drugs or cocaine or anything. I got marijuana, but that's not something I would say is a hard drug for me, but I don't use it or abuse it in any case. But now I realize that my life is more purpose, more meaningful hearing your story. And hearing your story gives me the fact that I'm on the right journey. I'm on the right path and I'm not over. It's not done for me yet. It's just beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have a question about this. We all go through. We all have different journeys that we've gone through in our life, and we're walking this path and our purpose. Um, I've also gone through or came from corporate, and I went from corporate to now working with the kids at school and as a life coach. Why does it take for something to happen to us or to others to go through transitioning or finding or trying to figure out who we really are and finding ourselves?
I love that question, and I want to respond with what I believe, and what I speak as my truth doesn't mean it has to be anyone else's truth, but
Right.
what I've been taught and what really resonates in my body is that, and I've been trained under Dr. Sue Morter, and she is a doctor in energy medicine. And the belief is that we are all sitting at a bus stop, and it's before birth, it's before coming down into planet Earth, and we're sitting at a bus stop and you have all these people there, and you're like, yeah, I'm so excited, we're going to get on the bus, we're going to go to planet Earth, and this time, this round, I really want to feel anger, or this time I really want to feel what it's like to have abandonment issues, or in this, this lifetime, I really want to learn, like, to not take things personally. And then at the bus stop, you enroll all the people. You're like, do you want to do this with me? Do you want to have these encounters? And you enroll them in it. And then what happens is you come down into planet Earth and you're born whole and complete. And you've asked to have these impacts, these trials and tribulations. And what I believe is that as we're going through the impacts, they are to actually wake us up. And we've had impact after impact and after impact, and they might have seemed small and very mesquite, I think is the word I want to use. Mm-hmm. But what happens is it's compound interest. And so it's like one event was to shake you up and to get you to wake up to your higher self, God, source, universe, Jesus, whatever it is. But it wasn't enough. So then the next impact comes in, and then the next impact comes in. And what it is that what I believe is that you are the author, the director, and the writer of your life. It's already been designed for you. And you have these impacts come in to wake you up, because most people, they don't go to that higher self, and I'm just going to use the word God, until something bad is happening in their life. And that's when we get on our knees and we pray or we go to church. It's typically when things are going wrong in our life. And so, it's through those trials and tribulations that I feel is actually here to serve you. So through every mess is a message, or through every mess is a blessing. And it's through those things that wake us up to our next evolution, where we're supposed to go. So it's almost like you're on one path, and then an impact comes in, so now you turn left, and then an impact comes in, now it's making you turn right. So it's actually there to be able to get you towards where you're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. And you actually and you do feel that. And I always say this. I say this a lot in the podcast. Is feeling it in the heart. It's a different feeling when you get there and you know that this is it for you, and this is the one that you've been looking for, or maybe searching for, because you really feel it in your heart. I mean, in my case, I've gone through, like you guys, corporate, and then I went through working for, being a recruiter or sales, or, now working with kids. But I think it's always been, we think we're happy where we are and we're doing the right thing, but there's still something missing. And then you move on to the next. It's almost like you're always in search for something. And then when you hit that, like you said, after those impacts, when you hit that spot, then that's when you really feel it. And like for me, in my case, being a life coach and just going through these transitions and changes, I felt it more in my heart and I felt it in my gut. I just felt it. It was just a different feeling, and it became more of a passion for me rather than I'm just doing it.
When I hear you're stating about being impact after impact, It reminds me of the movie The Matrix. You can
Uh-huh.
take the blue pill or the red pill. One of these pills you will take, but which one do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really ironic, when we turn to God, and I read this before in one of my conscious books. We only turn to God when, oh my God, this is happening to me. What is going through my life? It's only, and then it's when we think that God should give us a perfectly wrapped present and help us. But a lot of things I know in life now, the things I experienced from filing bankruptcy to having bad credit to having kids at a young age and all this stuff, it has been there to help me.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't go through that file bankruptcy, I didn't have kids at a young age, if I did not do all this stuff, who could I help out? Or more or less, where would I be at? I'll still be asleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And go ahead.
no, go ahead.
And that is really the ironic thing, is that people stay asleep forever. And I had conversations with my mom about this. I shot a video about this on my video vlogs. But no, when I look at my mother, I love my mother, and she's one example I want to talk about. We're talking on the phone, we talk almost every other day, and on the phone the other day, she's like, son, one day when I was growing up in Chicago, she grew up really, really poor. I mean, dirt poor. They couldn't even find like 5 cents for a loaf of bread in the 70s, right? I mean, sorry, 50s. So one day she said, son, you know what? My mom had no money, and my dad was in prison, and she told me a story that I'd never heard before. She went to an alley and she found 20 pennies. And that 20 pennies allowed them in those days to buy a loaf of bread, some crackers, and some meat, right? Because things are so less expensive in those days. But I saw tenacity. My mom told me that story. But then when I look at her life now, it's like, Mom, what happened? Like, what's going on? So the question being for you, Rae, is that based upon your experience, do some of us ever wake up, or would you stay asleep?
Yeah, and right now, I believe so. We've gone through 3 waves of awakening. So the first wave came after 2012 because the Mayan calendar ended. And so we had the first wave of awakening come through. And that's probably the wave of when you look at your 8-figure, 9-figure influencers. So they were the first wave. And then we came into a second wave, which was about 2016. And then now we're going through our third wave. And it's all because of the blessing of COVID. And so COVID came in and it made everyone stop. It made everyone go inside, and I mean physically into their homes, and then also go inward with themselves. And I think more people that weren't already open to personal growth and development, they got to have an opportunity to slow down and be like, my friend has been recommending this podcast. My friends have been telling me about this YouTube channel. My friends have told me about these books. And the blessing of COVID is that it shook up everyone's containers. We became comfortable. And so now everyone's like, whoa, I need to go back to basics. People started to realize that I've been married for 20 years and I don't know my spouse. And people came to realize that now we're working from home. I've realized I don't even like my job. And so we're in the third phase right now, and we're probably not going to have another wave for a couple of more years. And that's where I feel like the blessing of COVID has come. And there are people right now, and it's actually very beautiful. My uncle, he is, I want to say, in his mid 60s. And it was during COVID that him and I went to go get some tacos and beers. And I was very like unsure where my uncle stood when it came to the elections and politics and what he felt about COVID. And we started to have this very powerful conversation. And I had no idea that he was on the borderline of the red pill and the blue pill. And he started to tell me how he felt like there was more to life. And he said that, during COVID, that he didn't have anything else to do but to be on Twitter. And then he had nothing else to do but to talk to his other friends that were retired. And they started sharing a bunch of articles and things on YouTube. And it was in that conversation where I think my uncle at 65, um, accepted the red pill, which was like awesome to witness. And he started to have the epiphany of like, oh my God, I can create my reality. He started to realize that my wife being angry at me has nothing to do with me. It has to do with her. And so it gave me hope that any person right now who is open to receive new information and have awareness, that they are now going to be on the path of their journey, as long as they keep choosing curiosity, as long as they keep choosing to let go of what they think they know and look at other aspects that might be new to them. And so I believe right now, going back to your original question, I think it's split. I think that there are people like my uncle at even 65 took the red pill. And then for me, my mom, who is also 65, she took the blue pill. And I have to accept that as her journey. And I'm not here to change that for her or force my way upon her. And I just believe that that's what they chose before they even came to this existence.
And people has a choice, right? We all have our own different journey. And my son calls that opening your third eye.
Mm-hmm.
He reminds me that all the time whenever he sees me, when I'm working on any life coaching thing or just anything that is with, life coach, he reminds me, you've opened up your third eye. And I said, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, once that third eye opens, you're going down the rabbit's hole. and there's going to be time where you're like, eject. And it's like, I'm sorry, buddy. Like, it's open. And when your third eye opens, it can be scary. And
Mm-hmm.
because your whole paradigm is now shattered. And you had this like warm, fuzzy, cozy little space in your life. And it's something that you can control and it's something you can manipulate. But the minute that third eye opens, it's like everything's going to come through. And then you're going to question yourself. You're going to question reality. You're going to think you're crazy. You're going to think no one's going to understand you.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a million light workers in the world to hold space for you. And, and then in that space, you're like, change is coming. Because once your third eye is open, you can't be the victim anymore in your life. It is like, wow, there's cause and effect in life. And wow, I get to say no and I get to choose me. And you start to open up to that space of like, I've been programmed and conditioned. Like my beliefs aren't even my beliefs. My values aren't even my values. They were just taught to me and I accepted them. But now when your third eye is open, it's like, you got your freedom to now start choosing for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
When COVID hit, to me, it was a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
It allowed me. So the first shatter I got is, I never forget, after we did our first 3-day seminar when we started life coaching school over a year ago. After that Sunday, when we all went back home, I was messed up. I didn't take a whole day off work. I just didn't know what the hell was going. What do I believe anymore? All these things were happening to me. I called him. I had a coach at the time too. I called him. I said, dude, what the hell's going on? My mind's messed up. I can't focus. I felt low of energy. So that's when my eye opened up. But back to COVID is, this gave me a time to realize I was on a treadmill, and treadmill was, just as a trainer, you're working, 50, 60, 70 hours a week, you're running your own business, you're trying to make money because you have to sustain a certain amount of income in California. And when COVID hit and gyms got closed, I realized, wait a minute, I like waking up at, it's 5 o'clock in the morning, reading my book, and I like taking my dogs on walk. And I don't want to go back to the gym working on 60 plus hours a week. How was that serving me? How was that any value? What was I getting? Oh, I made a bunch of money. To do what? Spend more money? I don't understand. Do I really need all that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it opened up. So that's when, I left California. So I moved to Washington. I'm starting over again from scratch to a new business. And to me, I didn't like the fact when this whole COVID happened, I was watching news. I was one of those people watching news just to get the updates. Before I knew it, news was controlling me. I became one of those people that went to the grocery store, started loading up on canned goods, loading up on rice, loading up on noodles. And 24 hours later, I said, wait a minute, Ron, hold on a second here. You do not want nothing controlling you. So watching the news is controlling you. Do you want something controlling you? I said, no, I don't. And from then on, I never watched news again. I have not watched the news since February. Now, if I want to check some facts, I go online and do my own research, or I ask some questions. I refuse to watch the news because in my book, I am the problem and solution to myself. So if I want to solve a problem, I have to look internal to solve it versus external. So my problem to solve was, you know what? Let me fact check things and let me not listen to things that are controlling me. Let me control myself.
Hmm. And that's actually a lot of, with a lot of people. I hate to say and judge, like, the mistakes that a lot of people make is that they let, let's say, the news control them. They let what they hear from other people control them. But these are, again, people, a lot of people are out there that they don't have that type of that self awareness. I mean, we're coaches. We coach ourselves. We have our own professional coaches, which is us. They don't have that. And again, this is what happens. And when COVID hit, that's exactly what had happened to so many people in the world is they had allowed those the news, the people, what they hear, and others to control them.
Yeah, definitely. I truly believe COVID has been a blessing if you see the blessing within the mass. And with COVID, and I know that many people are going to come in with different perspectives, and it's not about who's right or who's wrong, because at the end of the day, it's creating fear if you
Hmm.
don't have the awareness, and it's creating separation.
Hmm.
And those are like two of the lowest frequency and vibrations that will keep us stuck. And so I question people. I'm like, what are you watching on the news that you're searching for that you can't find within yourself? And there was a point I did the same thing. I was addicted to Twitter, and it would just bring more fear into me. And I was like, hold up, like, why are you allowing this tool to take over you? And start to set a boundary with myself and to have the awareness and be able to have a healthier relationship with it, because at the end of the day, you have to take radical responsibility for yourself and what
Hmm.
is going to serve you so that you can continue to serve others.
Right. And I had so I also coach volleyball, and a former player of mine that I've recently connected with a couple of days ago, we were talking about, I was having a conversation with her about this. And she told me this. She said, two things happened to people during COVID or during the pandemic or being quarantined. And I said, what is it? And she said they either had a glow up or they had a glow down. And and I said, "Okay, explain." So she had explained it, and I asked her, "What was yours?" She said, "Mine was a glow up." So during that time and being quarantined, she had more time and a lot of time to think for herself and think who she really is and who is this. So she pretty much grown from being somebody else that she wasn't, because she was, in her mind, for her, she was being raised she was being raised differently. Basically, that's not what she wants.
Mhm.
It's not her. And now she said, now I've, this is coming from a 14-year-old, and she said, now I've realized I'm in control of myself. Not my mom, not my dad, and not all these other people. It's me. I have my own fashion. This is me. This is my personality. This is the kind of attitude I have. And then for her to realize and understand that, I know, again, 14 years old, she's actually, it did something good for her, where she's realized she has a choice and she's in control of what she wants to happen for her and her emotions, everything that she thinks.
Definitely an old, wise soul. And I mean, these young adults, I mean, these teenagers, they are light years ahead of us, like beyond, like intellectually, because they grew up in a different phase than we did. And so I know, like for me, I grew up with Oregon Trail, and I grew up with a typewriter and a fax machine.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. Cassette
Me
tapes.
too.
Even the cassette tape,
Walkman, library card.
Yeah.
And it's so awesome to see what I call these old wise souls, these reincarnated souls come on, and they are even beyond their parents. just their intellect and their way to reframing and not being the victim in their lives. And so, I love that. And I love that we have a future leader, or
Yeah,
she's already a leader.
I
And
know.
that's so exciting to see that this is the future generations to follow behind us.
Yeah, and I loved hearing that from a teenager, because it's something that you don't hear a lot from that age, you know? I mean, even us adults, we still go through that, and we still, go through figuring out who we really are and what we really want in life.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of, I have another question for you. So, I know in one of your profiles, I mentioned that you had, I think I sort of identified yourself as a gypsy, and I am curious where that came from.
Yeah, so how you do anything is how you do everything. And so since birth, my mother had us moving every year. I don't think I have very memories of me being in the same house more than a year or two. And so that has stayed with me through the decades of life. And I identified that as I moved 6 times in the last year and a half. And I had to sit with myself and be like, what's going on? Like, I know change is great. And I know that traveling the world and having a different environment can set you up for success. But I also had to be real, raw, and truthful with myself. And I'm like, and what came through for me was, you're not grounded. And what also came through to me is, you're not committed. And this was just me being with my channels and being in my meditations. And so my whole entire life, I have had this thing of, not only do I move every year, but like, I sell everything and I buy new stuff. I sell everything and I buy new stuff. And I'm like, oh my
Okay.
God, how much money have I
That's a
spent
lot of
on
work.
And so I moved. So I was in California in January, and then COVID hit, and I was in Chicago for a little bit. And then from Chicago, I went to Augusta, Georgia. And then I was in Augusta, Georgia for 4 months. And then I moved to Simpsonville, South Carolina. And and this is all just this year. So 4 times
Oh
in a
my God.
year. And I've had friends say, like, oh, you're a gypsy, you're a gypsy. And I didn't really take it seriously until you move to a small town, Simpsonville, South Carolina, and you meet a native here. And one of my neighbors, he is a native. He's lived here for 47 years. He has never been on an airplane. He has not gone very far than 1 to 2 states. And he was like, you are a gypsy. He's like, you just roll up in your little wagon and you roll up the drapes and you're like, come drink the sugar water. And you just get everyone to come. And so my nickname it's also Sugar Water. He's like, oh, you want to go talk to that girl for the sugar water? Because I'm the spiritual gypsy woo-woo one. And so that's kind of how people have identified me, is nobody can keep up with me. They're like, you're either in another state, another country, you're in a different apartment, you've moved here to there. And so I think people, they live vicariously through me because I change so much. I am like a chameleon. I'm a shapeshifter.
And you're living your life.
Living my life, yes.
Yeah. Yes. It sounds to me that at this point in your life, or for however many years you've been doing this, you're pretty much living your life to the fullest. That's how I
I
see it.
mhm. I definitely think that once I left corporate and I let go of the fear of a 401k and having bonuses and healthcare, I let that fear go, is when I truly started to embody freedom. And I'm not talking about being able to work from home and work your own hours. Those are the benefits of freedom, but it was the internal freedom of knowing that I'm fully supported by God and that I'm fully supported by the universe, and that I did not have to lean in on anyone anymore, and that I just was going to have faith and know that I'm living my purpose. And I truly believe when you're in your purpose, you will have the most abundance and prosperity in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me was the freedom that I got within.
Isn't it more of a very free, like that feeling of a freeing feeling? You just feel you feel light.
Very, very light.
Yeah. And yeah.
And I mean, not to make entrepreneurship look easy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to paint that picture for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Becoming an entrepreneur, you wear multiple hats in entrepreneurship until you start to hire a team and you start to outsource things. But the feeling of light when you are living your purpose and knowing that like what you're doing, and it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or if you're a domestic engineer, or if you're a school teacher, or an art teacher, or a doctor, or a nurse, when you know that you're waking up every single morning, eating and breathing and doing what God brought you to do on this planet, like that lightness is just, it's just a space that you can't even put a price tag on it,
Yeah. And I'm saying that type of feeling because I resonate with that a lot because, with working corporate before and I was once an independent recruiter, it was so, it was kind of nice to earn a certain amount, right? Money was good, but you know that there's a piece of you that you're not as happy as you think you are because you're helping other people. But once you really find that, I mean, just going through, I have kids, so of course I had to think about not only myself and my kids, like how am I going to feed them, but like you, once I got myself out of that situation or that fear of, well, I'm not going to have any money, this is not going to be enough for this or that. But once I started doing what I really wanted to do and, where I felt that this was if more for me, and then if I take away the whole money situation and not think about that, it was a different feeling. It was just a different, and then knowing and telling yourself that you're going to be okay, everything will be okay, but just do what you love to do. It was fine. And I'm just kind of like living the life and just being calm about it and just, like what you said, just walking your purpose, just walking through it.
Ray, when I'm listening to you, I haven't said anything for a while because I'm absorbing all this stuff like a sponge. But we all deal with this fear, right? It comes up, especially with the corporate background we all have had. What work have you done to eliminate that fear? Like fear of 401k, fear I'm gonna, because I remember when I quit my full-time job, the first thing came out of my boss's mouth was, what about your benefits? What about your 401k plan? I'll figure it out. That's what I told him. I'll figure it out. I'll make it work. So my question for you is that you've done the work for yourself, but how do you help eliminate that, or does it ever go away?
I think fear is a blessing, and it's a part of the emotional scale: anger, sadness, hurt, fear, guilt, and shame. And I believe when fear comes, it is an alert system, and it's letting you know that something might be effective or ineffective in your life, or maybe you're coming to a T in the road and it's time to make change. So I love fear. When fear comes in, I'm like, ooh, what's here for me? I'm very, very curious about it. And with fear, with anything, you have to break through, or you're going to still be sitting in the same position from a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. And fear is beautiful because the job of the unconscious mind is to protect you. That's its whole job. And so you have to train the unconscious mind like you're training a puppy. Like, it's okay. I know that you're trying to keep me protected. You don't want me to jump out of this airplane and go skydiving because your job is to keep me safe. And so we have to train it that going forward, I'm going to be okay. And you can easily do that by finding the evidence. And so let's say we do take the example of jumping out of an airplane, and I'm scared shitless of heights. And
Likewise,
so
me too.
and so you have to prove to the unconscious mind we'll be safe. And so you do research. You go on YouTube and you look up all the people that have jumped out of a plane And now you've proven to your subconscious mind will be okay. You can take it a step further and you can go interview someone who has achieved your goal. And so then you're getting the good, the bad, the ugly. And again, you have someone physically, tangibly in front of you saying, you can do this. Anyone that has achieved your goal is automatic permission slip that you can do it too. And so it's one, recognizing the fear is here and get excited about it. We've been trained that fear means scary. Fear means you're going to contract in. Fear means you have to be guarded. But can we have a new relationship with fear and make it our friend? And there was a great story about samurai fighters. And what they would do is they would premeditate before going into the fight, them losing. And they would premeditate watching it in their vision, in their mind, seeing themselves actually lose and feel that in their nervous system. Then they would premeditate the next round of them winning. And then they would anchor themselves in that feeling of winning the match. And so you have to put yourself in it. And the first step is probably visualization. And then what's the next baby step? Maybe before jumping out of an airplane, what would be the step before that? And then you gradually have compound interest and you break through the fear.
Mm-hmm. You know what? That's so true about the samurai. And I, I don't know if I've ever actually mentioned this in the podcast, but I used to do.
Hello?
I'm here. I think we have lost her.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry about that. Can you guys hear me?
Now,
Yeah.
now we can hear you. Lost you for a second.
Oh, you did? Okay. Sorry. So yeah, what I was saying was about the samurai is that that's true how they meditate and before they do competition. So I can't remember if you guys caught this one, but and I don't think I've ever mentioned this in any of the podcasts, is that I used to take martial arts and I used to compete competitively and I used to travel for it. And just like the samurai, and this is what I teach my students and my players, is that you take those fear as a motivation, as a challenge to yourself. So before my fight or before I compete, before I'm up next, and I could be sitting there waiting for my turn to be called, facing my opponent or facing all these other people. I'm sitting there watching, but my mind is somewhere else. Where that is I'm premeditating with my eyes open and watching everybody else up. Premeditating is I do the same thing. Have that vision of losing, getting kicked in the head, getting kicked or punched somewhere where I'm hurt. But I start, and when I stepped in there in the front where it's my turn to compete, that's already been turned to a challenge. I've already challenged myself. I've already had that vision. So when I get there, it's all positive for me. Like I kick me in the head or whatever, and I need to fight this way. And it does work. It really does. And so I've had the discipline of facing my fears in that way. And I think in your way, Rae, is pretty much almost the same thing, but just all still kind of somewhat different. But it really does work.
Yeah, Dr. Joe Dispenza, he is like the master at this, when that we can actually create new neural pathways in our brain, in our mind, by visualization all by itself. And they did a study where they had people come in and they physically played the piano every day for 8 hours for a week. And then they allowed them to go home. And then a week later, they brought them back and they did not put a piano in front of them. They hooked them up to a bunch of little brain scan, little monitors to their head. And they said, play the piano. And even though the piano wasn't in front of them, they were playing it in memory. And what they did is it was through that practice that they created the new neural pathways, which now gave them the confidence and the insurance that they knew that they would succeed. And so that's what we have to do with our minds, is train it to be able to see over and over and over you completing what you want to complete. Who was it? It's Tony Robbins. He was working with Sierra Williams, and there was a time in her career where her game was just not on par. I'm sorry, that's more of a golf term, but her tennis game,
That's okay.
her tennis game was,
Tennis,
kind
yeah.
of getting a little shitty. And it was through first realizing, okay, what's happening in your personal life? Because whatever happens in your personal life, you take it to work. And so first they had to work on the subconscious blocks and get to the root of things. And then once they cleaned that up, then they were able to go into the visualization and seeing herself play over and over and over and executing her hits. And that's how she ended up, I think, one year winning Wimbledon was because of working with Tony Robbins.
Yeah, she was winning back to back. And I think sometimes also it's almost like you have to think of the worst sometimes. I mean,
Oh, worst case scenario.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So for me, that's how it works. Sometimes I have to think of the worst and then before competing. And so when I step there and I get there in front of everybody or the whole world, it's actually total opposite, you know. And again, it's a
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah, one of the things I do is I certify new life coaches. And when we're training them, when we're taking them through the 3 days of training, we help them to set up SMART goals for their clients. And one of the questions is, a powerful question is, what is the worst case scenario if this doesn't happen, if your goal doesn't come to fruition? And it's like, we have to shine light on the worst case scenario. Like, just be real, raw, it's here, but this is the worst case scenario. And so, like, you could do all these other things and never even see the worst case scenario. But we got to shine light on it and be able to accept it, right? Because if you don't accept it, then you're just ignoring it. And then you're being pushed by probably some other pain in your life. So I love that.
Right.
That's amazing right there. I thought about that myself. So I don't know if I train myself or think about it, but I don't focus on worst case scenario because I always say to myself, regardless of what happens, I'll figure out a way.
Mm-hmm.
So how most people say, well, if plan B doesn't work out, plan A doesn't work out, you have plan B, then so forth and so on. Me, I say, well, plan A may not work out, but may give a new trajectory to something else. Because for me, my whole life is really, I believe life is transitory. So nothing is infinitely determined. And just because something didn't work out does not mean at the same time I've been sent another way, which is more beneficial for me, what I really want. So I really work on my spirituality. All of us want pray for better health for ourselves, for our loved ones, family members, and so forth. I realized over the months now, I'm starting to pray for more wisdom and perseverance. And at the same time, praying for my loved ones for good health and all that stuff. But I want that wisdom because when that plan A may not work out, you want wisdom and fortitude to at least figure it out, right? Or something come to light you didn't see the first time. So I guess I don't know if being the fact you train life coach yourself, do you think that's a right path to just only focusing on whatever outcome, or should I always plan for a worst case scenario?
Yeah. So what I teach my students and what I teach my clients is, do not get attached to the goal. You're going to set the goal, you're going to put it out there to the universe, and then you're going to not be fixated on it. Because if you're fixated on it, then you're trying to control it. And then when you control it, you put yourself in a box and you might miss the magic around you. And so being able to say, this is my goal, this is what I'm looking for, but really it's what's really at the root of it is, how do you feel when you reach that goal? Because a lot of times your goals have been in front of you and you didn't recognize it because you wanted it to look a certain way. You thought it should look like XYZ, but the goal comes in looking differently. But because you didn't have an attachment to the feeling sensation, you missed it. And so what's most important is, one, the manifestation, I would say first the awareness. And then the second is, I'm putting it out to the universe. This is what I'm calling in for myself. And then let it go. Don't get attached. And then the next one is, how will I feel when it's there? Because if I feel it, then I might be at my goal already. And then the next thing is being open. It might come in a different way, and be open that you chose the right path. And in that path, it might send you down a different trajectory, but it was the first step. But God always has more for you.
So basically, the idea is to be open to all possibilities, but not fixated on one specific thing.
Yeah. So if you are also, when it comes to goal setting, yes, manifestation is powerful, right? But you also have to be in action.
Hmm.
And so when you're taking what I say aligned action, then you are working towards the goal. But it's through the steps of aligned action that you might actually discover something different and discover something that you never even expected.
So it goes back to what I learned in school too: trust the process.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Trust the
Mm-hmm.
process, because we all it always goes back to the one I read in a book. I think it was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. He says we always pray for something, and we think God is supposed to give us this special, amazing gift wrap present, and that's what we prayed for. No, it never shows up that way. It shows up, but we just missed the prayer, or we missed the universe. We missed something because we expect it to look a certain way. We expect that present to look very refined, especially wrapped, but we missed the whole process and what it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what I tell my clients too: is it's very important in life. You are where you should be at the right time. You just really got to trust the process. You will get what you want, but you in the process is a lot of meat, and in the process a lot of things that can be abundance. And if you miss that, then you're so fixated on, okay, I got to quit this job because I got to make more money. Okay, then what? What's next? And that's why I tell them, trust the process. You where you should be at the right time. And I say that because I'm 37. I turned 37 90 days ago. And 10 years ago, if someone had told me this, I think they got to go to see a psychiatrist or a witch doctor, something like that. Something's wrong with their mind. And it's really because I wasn't ready to accept something different. But two,
Mm-hmm.
3 years ago, when I actually started doing the work, I was really accept there are vibrations, there's a universe. What was a shocker for me almost 6 months ago was I was reading a book called Letting Go by David R. Hawkins, another one that does conscious and therapy work. I didn't know from a kid, I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, that there's a difference between spirituality and religion.
Yeah.
When I read that 6 months ago, it's like, really? You trying to tell me the whole time I'm thinking the right religion, and religion and spirituality are completely opposites? And then I was like, wait a minute here. So then I realized I did more research, and obviously being that Jesus Christ, that's what our parents believed in. It, we're missing a lot of different things there. Like, we're missing the fact that Buddha was born before Jesus Christ. We're missing the fact that this happened for that. And it's like, man, we got to focus on spirituality and the universe rather than a specific religion. Because another thing, the testament we were reading in the Bible had revelations, which is when God ends the world and new world starts and all this stuff. That's in the New Testament. We never, as a kid, ever read the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, wow. So it's amazing, all this work out there, and the process again is I'm just trusting the process on where I should be at the right time. And all these things we're doing with the podcast and stuff is just really, really good work.
Yeah, when you say trust the process, that's the space of growth. And I always say, like, our life is 80% of the work. And I always give this analogy. And what it is that you're sitting on the sofa, and then on the other side is a castle, and in between is a forest. And your job every day is to get off of the sofa by choosing you and then go into the forest. And it's in the forest that you might get hit with an arrow, you might get hit with a fireball coming through, you might encounter a dragon, you might encounter, a fighting force. And then that right there, what you go through in that moment in the forest is a part of the process. It's the growth. And so, yes, we're working towards the castle, but the great thing about what we do with coaching is really about your client being in the forest. And it's about getting them back off of the sofa, get back into back into the forest, because it's through that we grow. It's through that we expand, and we start to realize, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to go this way. I can go that way, and I don't have to say yes. I can say no. So I love that.
You know what the hardest thing after the force analogy? It's the first time I ever heard that one. That's amazing. And what hit me right on the head right now with the hammer was, you be in a relationship with somebody and you see all the possibilities, you see infinite things happening, but they don't see it.
Mm.
They see, well, think she's going to be this way. And no, there could be any way. There's no right or wrong. No, this is right and this is wrong. I said there is no right or wrong. Right or wrong is only based upon your journey and perception. So I tried to talk to her about it, and I just leave it alone. Like, hey, when you're ready, we'll talk, but I just leave it like it is, because she doesn't really understand the work I've done and how much this work, even right now, Rae, talking to you in this podcast, you're basically adding to my journey. See, we're a teacher and a student at the same time. You don't realize what you're saying is giving me power. And what I mean by that is, even though we never met in person, it's the first time we ever talked, but the vibrational is so high, we're meeting each other in the middle. So when you said the T earlier, and what I mean by T was, I'm at a crossroad right now where should I continue with training because that platform exists and I know that one, or should I turn to the left, which is what I really want and what I'm passionate about? See, the fear that comes up is, well, you don't know if you're going to make money, right? Because that's my belief system. My belief system is lack of not having enough money, because I've been there. But it's constant work with me. So, or should I turn to the right and do what I already know? And I check in with myself, which is, Ron, what is your purpose? What do you really want? And when I check in myself, my head turns to the left and says, you want to help people. You want to become that speaker. You want to do all these things. Because I realized driving from California to Washington on a 14.5-hour drive, that my goal was at 46 to be a multimillionaire. Okay. Because the idea is, the more money you have, the better off. After listening to this audible by Napoleon Hill called How to Own Your Own Mind, I realized I will be rich. I will be rich by helping out 1 million people. Because entirely, do I really need to be a multimillionaire to live life, to travel, to have nice clothes, to live somewhere? No, I know a lot of people that live on less, way less. So if I help out 1 million people, that means I energetically go with them through the rest of their life. So I'm fulfilling my purpose in this universe. So that's what I mean by, you're going to go with me and throughout the rest of my life, because what you're saying here resonates so high vibrational that I can't help but proceed forward. And it gives me more. I guess I'd be the guy that's a parachute going on internet researching, but it gives me more energy. The fact I'm on the right path, my purpose. So it's one thing, Rae. I want to say this. I know it's over an hour, but this is so amazing. I just can't stop. I'm eating up like a fat kid loves cake. Okay, I just can't keep eating it.
It's virtual. It's virtual chocolate cake.
I love cake.
I'm eating it up. Today is Halloween, right? So I'm eating up like cake. As we proceed forward in this podcast and we go our separate ways after the podcast, what is one thing vibrational, Rae, you want to say to the rest of the universe right now?
Say your question one more time.
So what is one thing vibrational, means higher level, you would like to say to our listeners and to the rest of the universe right now to empower those people?
I love it. There's so much I can say, but I will tell you, live your life in gratitude and you will see your world shift.
I love it. I will live my life in gratitude forever now.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's like saying gratitude is the right attitude. Yeah.
It really is.
Yes, it is. And also, to add to that, Rae, if you can also share to our listeners where they can find you, or how, if they want, if they want to take your classes and yeah.
Yes, so you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. The name is Rae Carmen, so it's RaeCarmen for those two social media platforms. On LinkedIn, it would be Desiree Slusher. And then on my website, you can go to templeofbreath.com and you can see all of my weekly classes that I offer, where I understand that people are busy in this world, but I'm also a big believer in you are worthy of 30 minutes to give yourself an opportunity to drop into self and do a 30-minute class that will vibrationally and energetically be able to support you to keep being the badass that you are. And so I hold weekly classes that people can take.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and actually that's Desiree with a Z,
Yes,
not an S. Yeah.
correct. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Thank
I,
you.
I think I might join one of your breath works. I'm curious about it. And do you hold it just for my purposes? Do you hold it every day, once a week? When do you class, or should I look online calendar?
Yes, so I am going to be holding a weekly class for 30 minutes. And please, I would love for any of the listeners that get this on the replay, if you send in a message, actually, we'll do a coupon code for you guys. So what should we call it? What's the name of your guys' podcast?
Life's a shuffle.
Life's a Shovel. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
So if you put in Life Shuffle as a coupon, all of your listeners will be able to get a free class with me. And so 30 minutes breath work. It might be somatic dance. It might be sound bowls. You just never know with me because I'm a shapeshifter, but it will definitely be a space for you to actually receive. You don't have to do anything except for show up for yourself and be in a space of receiving and just allow the body to speak to you.
Awesome. Okay, I'll be joining one of your classes. I wrote down a promo code. I put it on our podcast and I replay it on YouTube and also Apple Podcast and everything else out there. But Rae, thank you. It was a pleasure. I appreciate it. And as always, to our listeners, this is Ron Johnson, their life coach, motivation speaker, and health coach. And if you're in a place that you need help, myself, Gloria, and Rae are here to help you. But there's always help out there, and you can always live the best life that you want to have with the opportunity of knowing you have a choice.
Yes, and again, thank you for joining us today, Rae, and for sharing your journey, your story, and what you do. Again, this is Gloria, your life coach, and thank you for listening to another episode of Life's a Shuffle.